It's 2023 and the 8 Black Hands are back. We have some hot issues to talk to y'all about tonight. Let's get it. Yo, 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 yo. When you hear that intro, you know it's time to kick it off.
I think that is the shortest intro in history.
That's right. We're not playing around.
You got about 2 seconds.
You got 2 seconds and you're on. 3 seconds, Dougie Fresh, you're on, whatever. Welcome back to the 8 Black Hands, friends and family. We are back for another year. It is 2023. And as always, the world doesn't stop for us just because we took breaks and we took time off to enjoy some time with our family and our friends over the holidays. The world kept going and issues kept coming up. But before we jump in to what we're going to talk about today, let's just check in, fellas. It's the beginning of the year.
We've been doing that.
How y'all doing? This is listen. It's the beginning of the year, and I'm sure y'all made some resolutions because, as everybody does, they're going to be totally new and brand new and different in some kind of way. They're going to go to the gym every day. They're going to they're going to stop smoking. They're going to lose weight. They're going to lift cars. What? Did y'all do any of that this year? Is that really a thing?
I lifted some cars. Yeah, I mean, that's all. Lifted a couple cars.
First and foremost, I want to give my man Big Reef a shout out. Hey, he went to the gym 4 times last week. Happy New Year.
Oh, Lord,
I did. First time since football days in college. Lifting weights right now really my thing, but I did it. But overall, I don't usually make resolutions though, Chris. I mean,
I was going to ask you, do y'all believe in them?
I mean, if I'm gonna do something, I'm gonna do it whatever time of the year it is. I don't have this kind of jump off point of like, oh, this is. If I was gonna do it, I'd probably do it in the spring anyway, like kind of renewal, flowers blooming. I'm out in the dirt being contemplative. I will probably do it. If I did it, it would be around then. I have done it around things like births, deaths, things like that were more monumental than the turning of a calendar page.
I wonder if this is different. Both of you have been principals. Is this different for educators because New Year's is like in the middle of the year and it feels like a weird time to make a resolution? Like, I'm going to be a better teacher this year. And you're in the middle of the school year. This might be different for educators.
Well, every day is good for an educator to restart, renew, improve. So
ain't nobody got time for
that. So those 2 weeks going into a break is or you get 2 weeks over the break and then coming back is an amazing time to reset, right? So if things weren't working, it's a time for you to go into the classroom, talk to students and let them know, hey, this wasn't working and it's because of me. You gotta take ownership. Not taking ownership ain't gonna work. But these things weren't working, and so we're gonna reset in order to activate this part of your learning. And so that's always good to do a reset.
Yeah. Pivots and stuff like that are I mean, anytime good. I mean, breaks are good for that. Weekends are good for that.
It could be a good
end
time
of the day is good for that.
It could be a good time to leave.
Too many of those. Too many. I mean, I feel grateful I did not have a whole lot of that as a principal, but I mean, I've heard horror stories. People coming back and just like, oh, so and so's not returning. Didn't even clean out their room. Just was like never should. Never.
So I've never had the didn't clean out my room, but I have had the a couple days prior to I'm not returning over the break. And most of the time when you got people like that, regardless of if you're in a jam, it's usually the best thing for students. If you have someone who so I don't want to pigeonhole myself by saying this, right? Because feel like it goes into that whole high character thing. But if you're leaving kids mid-year, I personally do not believe that you have high character unless there is a absolute reason for you to be able to do so, right?
I've seen a lot of people on Twitter talking about this. Educators, not Twitter, more on TikTok. Educators are a little bit toxic on one part of TikTok.
On Twitter anymore, right? I think he's only on TikTok.
No, bro. I'm on. Listen. I'm on every platform. I'm even on Tumblr right now. So
you're
I'm still on Tumblr. Yeah, and even Post News. But there's a teacher Twitter stream that is like, let's normalize not making this job a calling anymore. Let's normalize you quit when you need to quit if it's mid-year. Let's normalize self-care basically and stop taking on,
Self-absorption.
yeah, whatever. And it starts to feel a little bit self-indulgent. Like, yeah, I just walk out on the kids in the middle of the year. Like, I don't feel bad about it.
That.
Yeah, let's just
Yeah.
normalize that. I don't feel
They've been
bad about
shitting
that.
on their whole lives, so just let's us
Yeah.
normalize it.
Let's take one more dump on them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you know what? It's
Normalize
in the frame of we've been treated so badly that it's your fault. It's not our fault that we're quitting.
Well,
But you know what they say,
which is partially true.
Oh, you know what they say? They say, when teachers leave, they're not necessarily leaving the school; they're leaving the principal or the administration.
Yeah, that's what Shantae Barnes says. Educator Barnes on Twitter wrote a piece that went over 1 million. And I think it resonated with so many teachers because she basically wrote that in a piece was teachers don't leave schools, they leave principals. And
see, I would add an adjective there: effective teachers.
Yeah,
that's true.
If they leave their school as their principal,
That's
there are a
true,
whole lot of folks
yeah.
who are leaving, not because of how some of them are leaving for all kind of personal reasons, nothing to do, and some of it just like, you know what, I am ineffective, I was not well prepared, oh, I don't want to be accountable, oh, I don't want someone observing, I mean, I've heard people like, why'd you leave? Because they observed me. I don't think anybody should observe me. I mean, like, just dumb stuff.
Yo, if I had a penny for every time I heard that, I'd have 10 cents.
I mean, that's crazy. Like, and then at the same, in the next time they're drunk somewhere, they're just talking about, oh, I never got feedback. Like, yo, you can't talk out of both sides of your mouth. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to be observed. Oh, I shouldn't be siloed. We feel so isolated. But like all of that, like, for me, and I've just been grateful. Like the teachers that I've worked with have been so like just collaborative, effective, and like able to give feedback and say, and like, you know what? This is what we can do to improve. This is what we're going to do. This is what we need administration to do, and all of that. But unfortunately, there's a lot of people who want to normalize doing things, to kids, and we see it all the time. I mean, we see it all the time. If we know that racism is inherent in these spaces, mindsets are constricted about our children. We just can't assume like, oh, every time somebody leaves, is something that they didn't do, that they're innocent in all of it.
Reef, I got a question for you. So what I've noticed, right, beyond the formal observation, beyond the informal observation, right, how did peer observations work at your school? Reason why I ask is because if you have a good setup in terms of like peers going in and doing observations of one another, right, giving critical feedback, especially those veteran teachers that know exactly what administrators are looking for, that's how you improve your school. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I like peer observations. I think it's like we never mandated it, but
it can't be mandated. You cannot mandate it.
No, I mean, I've seen some people who have mandated, like this is part of their thing. Yeah, but I think like part of leadership, we always had instructional coaches, and they were also teachers, part-time teachers who would also coach. But the best part about it, Ray, was when they would observe each other with, had nothing to do with me. It was just more of the culture of improvement. And you know what? Oh, so-and-so, Nadir Suleiman, she's she's one of the best teachers in the city. Yep. Hey, can you come observe me? And I'm going to observe you, that, that kind of thing. Just the collegiality, the collaboration, and ultimately trying to improve student outcomes as well as our practices.
Hey, Reef, you know what made me do my first peer observation? It was the Baltimore City Public Schools. And when my kids came in, it took me about 5 minutes in order to kind of rile them down and get them ready for learning, right? So I was like, what the hell is going on in this period prior to where, like, I don't think learning is happening. Or like, right. Yeah, what is happening with this transition? So I wanted to go and observe that teacher just to see what was going on in the class. Because, if you're in your classroom and you're minding your business, then a lot of times you don't really know what's going on in the other classes unless, you talk to the kids or whatever. So I went and did a peer observation of this teacher. And then I realized, I'm like, oh, I know why because they're not learning anything and because nothing's happening in that class prior to. And so what it does is it allows you to have good conversations with your colleagues in terms of like, hey, well, why don't you try this or why did you try that? Right? Because it's what we do.
Yeah. Sometimes that's what some of y'all do. Some of y'all don't do anything. Some of y'all sit in your listen. I've heard this, so this is what I want to say. I always want to be the adversary on this show. So I heard what you two said as what I consider to be two brothers who are good school leaders, right? I can tell you about a school here locally where all the teachers were complaining because the principal sat in her office all day with the door shut and they could never get her to come out to do anything, right?
Oh,
Now, I can tell you, in my years of being a school board member, that wasn't a story that was rare. I heard that story oftentimes. It was like, we barely see her or him, and when we do see her or him, they're on their way out the door with a gang full of keys in their hands, like saying they gotta, jump in their car and go somewhere or whatnot.
It's
there's
like
a
the
range
joint of Abbott Elementary, that principal,
right? Except for not funny, right? Because at least on Abbott Elementary, she is funny. Well, listen, this keys in.
I haven't watched that show in 3 months, man.
I've watched it. Actually, it's gotten better. It wasn't as bad as we thought it was going to be. Not going to go there now, but I thought it was going to be a bad situation. It didn't turn out to be as bad as I thought.
Fine. It was fine.
All your charter people were losing their mind, and so was I. But listen,
but
this strikes
what Aaron Rodgers says. RELA.
I can't hear everybody at once. I can only hear one person.
Go back? And it's okay to go back and watch it.
You can go back and watch it. I'm sure you'll be fine. You'll be fine with it. You'll do all right, I think. Listen, this keys into something that we have been seeing pop up in terms of professionalism as a topic. And there is a article that, Ray, I think you were the one who forwarded it to us today, that there was an article that came out. It was about professionalism. It was from Forbes. And in Forbes, it says, legal scholar Leah Goodrich unpacks how professionalism is used as a tool for racism. So see, y'all will make anything racist. I'm just about to say, we're going to talk about this. Y'all will make anything racist at any given time. But anyway,
a lot of it is.
I mean, a lot of it might be. It's for the culture. I'll drop this in the comments for people to see what article we're talking about. But it's Forbes. It's an article about the scholar. What is her name? Leah Goodrich. She has an essay. And here's a piece of the essay. It says, this essay examines professionalism as a tool to subjugate people of color in the legal field. Professionalism is a standard with a set of beliefs about how one should operate in the workplace. While professionalism seemingly applies to everyone, it is used widely to police and regulate people of color in various ways, including hair, tone, and food sense. I have never heard of this one before. Food sense. Thus, it is not merely that there is a double standard in how professionalism applies. It is that the standard itself is based on a set of beliefs grounded in racial subordination and white supremacy. Food sense must be like when y'all be bringing pig feet to lunch and open them up in a room. That must be what y'all are doing. So listen,
in the meeting room, eating chitlins, making the odors all over the place. I can
stop with the.
I can see people in what schools you work.
Let me just stop.
Where?
Let me just stop with y'all and start right away with the. Do you agree or disagree? With the premise here. The premise is that professionalism is based on a set of standards that are linked directly to white supremacy. So holding people to this same set seems like it's universal, but it's not universal.
So there are some links, right? And there's some credence to this argument, right? And so the example that I will use is black women's hair. Like black women should go in. You should go in, wear your hair natural, wear your hair however the hell you want to wear your hair, because your hair is not a symbol of how you're going to perform on the job, right? And we've seen several instances of folks not being able to be employed because they have dreads, or because white people don't like how their hair look, right? Or it's not pressed, or it's not permed, or it's not how society thinks that it should look in order for it to resemble beauty in other people's eyes. Fuck that. Black women, y'all wear y'all hair however y'all want.
But you think that's a racist situation?
If it's just black hair, yes, of course it is. I'm not gonna say it.
No. I mean, well, listen. Let me ask you this: can a white woman wear a mohawk to a bank job?
Yes.
No, she can.
Yes, she can.
Yes, she can. You've never in your life seen a punk rock bank teller.
Bro, that's probably because she's out playing music, because she has a choice to do whatever the hell she wants to do. She doesn't have to be regulated to go into work into the bank.
when you walk into a bank, you see all them crazy asymmetrical Karen haircuts. Bro, I can't deal with that the background, but you know, what is going on?
Bro, you know who that is. You know who that is. You late for sound check.
Anyways, you I guess the only point that I'm trying to make is, and it's a point of general adversarial, just to push back. You don't think that there's also professionalism standards if somebody was a punk rocker and wanted to work in one of these jobs, or
I mean, but you're going to the extreme, and that you know what I mean, like normal natural hair of Black women is that's not the same as shaving your hair, dyeing it, blah blah blah. You know what I mean? Like that's just coming with if it's not straightened. There were people that would not be able to get certain jobs. Well, listen, a few years ago, I was told that Black men couldn't wear, like beard and things like that. That's like a recent where more it's, you know what I mean? Like, and I'm sure there's some Black men who prefer to shave. I'm just saying, like, if there was, I do think that there's a particular same way the standard of beauty. Like, no, this is the only thing that's beautiful. Nothing else counts. And your proximity to this white standard is how you're going to be judged in all places, including job spaces. No, that is born and part and parcel of a racist construct. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Is it racist or is it classist?
I think it's racist. You can be wealthy and still they say, like, no, you can't wear locks. You can't do this. You can't wear natural fro as a sister. Like, nah, like, come on. That's not the same as a punk rock. We're like, this is the natural normal, not like I don't know how they would term punk rock in white culture, but it's not the what they call it, mainstream. It's not mainstream
because y'all don't know white people. Y'all don't know white people. See, I live in a very white place. So,
and I'm gonna start looking at bank tellers to see. I believe I could probably find somebody with shade, maybe not a radical.
You see, Reeve, you're doing it all wrong.
But I bet you I can find some shade sides in the back.
Let me plug this real quick.
Y'all don't know.
Bank with Greenwood, bro.
I don't random.
It's not random. He just said he was going into a bank. I said bank with Greenwood. That's not random.
Well, anyways, my point in saying this is just to say, if y'all know what a mullet is, this is why I'm asking.
In the back, right?
Party in the front. I mean, no. Business in the front, party in the back, right? That's what they call it. So it's kind of short up here, but it's long in the back, right? Like Billy Ray Cyrus or whatnot. This is why I'm saying, is this a classist thing? Because there's a set of white folks that have different things going on that also are not welcome to the professional party.
Like what?
I
bet you could find a mullet in a professional setting.
You probably could find
maybe not now. Somewhere. I'm talking about when it was in.
So white folks do something to their white underclass that we do to our Black underclass. And I don't think we see it because we don't see life through their eyes. They have a classist set of people that they don't want to interact with in their own race too, right?
Like
there's a certain way in which these folks can show up when you take us out of it, when it's just white people. There's ways in which they don't let some of themselves in the room too, right?
Bro, I think how the white middle class, how the white upper and middle class look at the rural white folks. I think that's what you're leading to. I think that's what you're talking. If that's what you're talking about, then you're absolutely right. Because bro, they treat them one step above us.
Yeah, and in some cases they might want us more. But anyways, so because this show is so often about education, and this is why I'm taking up the Bill Cosby line here. I'm just channeling him this week. Only in one way. I just want to be clear. The old Cosby, not the new Cosby. Not the new Cosby. And it's only to say this. Like, I spent years helping people find jobs, and I worked on welfare to work programs. When I was working in those programs, the goal really was to get you employed. So when we would be thinking about how to help you practice before you go to the interview, because people are nervous. They're nervous before they go sit before these folks. They always don't have the right thing to wear. They don't know what questions are going to be asked. They're getting tripped up or whatnot. So it's our job to actually kind of game the system, to basically say, listen, interviewing for a job is a game. It's all just a game, right? Like, and we're going to help you game the system. So we got to know what the rules are. We got to know what people respond to or don't respond to. We got to just like play the thing for however we got to play it if the goal is for you to become employed, right? So when that's your job, like that's your goal is to help people get jobs, and you know that certain things are going to get them X'd out of the box. Now apply that to education. We could teach our kids that professionalism is racist or whatnot. It might be even true, but I just don't know how helpful that's going to be for you.
There's still certain things that you got to do in order to be able to. There's still certain things that you got to be able to do in order to navigate the system, in order to land in an upright position, right? So like there's still like, so for example, I've heard people make the argument of about time, like, that's a white being late is a white supremacy construct. No, it's not.
This is my point. This is my point.
So to that aspect of your
that's
point,
wacky wokeness. Wacky wokeness. It's different.
The clock is racist.
That sun setting. Damn it, you're racist, son.
The sun is racist.
Yeah,
it came up this morning.
Yeah, at the same time, we could actually predict it. That's ridiculous.
I mean, so Sharif, you were shaking your head no. Like in the point that I'm making, and I'm not sticking hard on this point.
I know,
I'm just
you're
saying,
being a contrarian. Like,
well, no, I'm also trying to be practical because, like I said, it really was my job to help people get jobs, and a lot of them weren't getting jobs. Like, so we had to figure out how we help prepare people.
No, and I get that. I think helping people navigate systems, but but also at the same time would say like it's a racist system, and hey, we're going to help you navigate. I wouldn't say like, oh, it's not racist. Let me help you navigate this professionalism. I'm like, hey, some of this is not set up for you. It's set up by someone else's standard orientation and belittling of you and what you look like and what you sound like. Now let's win the game, right? And I'll give you a perfect example. We had one time we combined our summer school with another school. It was more efficient and cost effective to do so. So we combined two schools. One of the other school leaders, the visiting school, was a white guy who was like tatted, colored tats, all over the place. The big, he was talking about punk rock. He was in that type of, just space that was an alternate type of lifestyle. It wasn't like a mainstream educator lifestyle. And my students saw him and they saw he had like a position of authority. And they're like, man, oh, you could be a school leader and be tatted like that. Da, da, da. I was like, let me tell you something. He might be able to, but don't assume that you might be able to. I was like, and listen, this is your body, this is your world, but no, come in with your eyes wide open. You might not get hired as an assistant principal or a teacher coach with tats on your face as a black person, where this white man clearly was able to do so. Right. And I gave him the real, like, hey, he was able to do that. It doesn't necessarily mean that this same school and district would do that for you. That's all I'm gonna say.
Reef,
right?
A face?
Bruh. And so we and then at the same time, Chris, like all of our 10th graders would take an internship as a class. So they would actually go and have to compete for internships. And the first half of the year, and this was it wasn't elective, but it was like a 2-day course, twice a week course. So the first half of the year, they learned resume building, how to interview, how to greet the interview, how to predict the questions, what question to come in. Like, it was an actual class. We were helping them navigate how to, like, listen, I was telling somebody the other day, this is like one of the few times I couldn't help students. I would love to help my students. Interview time, they would show up with these pieces of cloth and like, hey, can you show me how to tie a tie? And I'm like, no, I never actually learned how to do that, but I can help you with all the other aspects of you going into this this job, but I couldn't help them tie a tie. But they would go in, and a lot of them would want to wear tie and suit and shoes and all that kind of stuff. And these are 10th graders.
Yeah, I think we could do a better job of. I think this denouncing professionalism and these things as racist actually cuts the wrong direction. I think it's bad.
I don't like
it's
the term, right? Like,
yeah,
there is something that's professional, and because I've given people feedback like that's unprofessional, right? And so when we say the term professional in anything, because then there may be people ascribe anything that's under the term professionalism as race. I'm like, nah, there's certain aspects of being labeled or marginalized, but not the term, not just this idea of being a professional. No.
Yeah, but
I think
some of that's really title though, right? When the comms kind of like title getting people to like what, right?
Yeah, but I think it's important to kind of have those conversations prior to, right? So that everybody can be aligned, everybody can be on the same page in terms of like what exactly professionalism is, and so that as a staff, you guys can unpack that so that if anything comes up, like hey, I'll give you a perfect example for us, right? In teaching. Right. And I don't know if you guys remember this, but I had a tweet that kind of went viral when I talked about wearing tights to work. Right. And and so
you were advocating because you wanted to wear those, or you were saying
yeah, I was advocating because I wanted
why it went viral.
Yeah. And so in my advocating to want to wear tights to work. So there were some female leaders in our school that were like, nah, we're not doing that, right? But then they took over the conversation so that no male really had to like broach that in order to have conversations with folks about what should be worn or what shouldn't be worn or whatever. So it was good to have leaders step up and us not have to have that uncomfortable conversation, because then it goes into like you're a male and you're policing women's bodies, and I don't even want to even.
No tight.
I think we've gone too far. We've gone too far.
Is cursing okay, Chris?
What's that?
Is cussing in a professional setting, is that unprofessional?
I see. This is what I feel like if you work at a bar, or if you work at a church, or if you work at a daycare center or whatnot, you're going to have to know what's appropriate for where you're at. Yeah, like where you're at. If you're walking around, I mean, if you're working in a daycare with a bunch of babies and kids and whatnot, it's probably going to be different than if you work that night at a bar and you do something, in that job setting. But so judgment is important here, like good judgment. Like, do you wear pajama bottoms to the grocery store? Right? Do you show up to a meeting, a business meeting on Zoom with a bonnet on? Right? Do you see, these are questions that could get me in trouble. Y'all not even gonna answer, but I'm okay. I'm okay with some degree of classism, because there's just some things I don't want to see. I don't want to see a flight attendant look like she just rolled out of bed. And I don't want to see a bank teller look like he about to rob me. And I don't want to go to a daycare and have people cussing and screaming like bad.
I don't want to see that in Walmart or Home Depot.
Bro, and you just said the word, like Walmart. Go in Walmart.
You don't talk bad about Walmart on this show.
I mean, listen, I love me some Walmart and Target and whatnot, but there are differences in life, and we can't say it. We can't say it. We're not supposed to say it. We're not supposed to go there. But I'm just saying, there's a difference between what some people do for their own children in terms of teaching them manners and how to navigate the world and how to win the game and how to be appropriate for circumstances. And then there's another set of people that make a lot of money just on creating new language and essays and studies that make us dumber by calling everything racist, as if they themselves, with doctor at the end of their name, didn't pass through a few gates to get where they're getting to. Right? Right.
But maybe they get there saying that these gates are inappropriate. Listen, what I'll
they're saying this gate that I just got through is terrible. Like Clarence Thomas, affirmative action is horrible. I benefited from it. I totally benefited from listen, bro, you made it.
That's not fair.
Bro, that's the same thing. That's the same concept. It worked for me. It ain't gonna work for y'all. I played by the rules. I had manners. And listen, she names a few things in here. So like the smell of food, I think, is an interesting one, right? Because that cuts across ethnicities. Like, like if you've ever worked in a workplace that has a lunchroom, I don't know when the last time y'all worked in a place where people are bringing stuff from home and heating it up in the microwave. This is a real issue. This is a real.
This in the cafeteria. I mean, this is one thing in an office space as opposed to a cafeteria.
It's some aroma that comes with food,
some
right?
aromas, and when she said tone, there's another thing too about how loud.
That's what I wanted to get into.
And can be loud, and
yeah, but that's usually accredited to.
And some of that's subjective too.
That's usually, because when you start talking about loudness, you start talking about tone, and then you start talking about aggression. That's all about perception. That's all about how you perceive a person, right? So like that's racist, bro. So like like if I'm having a conversation with you and like our voices elevate or whatever, but like it's still endearing and we still know that there's love for one another or whatever. But then somebody on the outside looking in is like, oh, well, they were yelling at each other, right? Like that's racist, and that's you not understanding the culture of the people that you work with.
Yeah, listen, I mean, and back to that profanity, like I've seen superintendents who cuss like sailors in professional settings. Like no black woman's gonna be, gonna be able to do something like that, right? Like it was. Huh?
There's studies that support that there's a higher level of intellect that comes from people that curse more than people that don't.
Yeah,
well, some of y'all are geniuses.
I don't buy that. A lot of it is, and if I ask you to replace that word with something that's longer than a 2-syllable one, then they wouldn't be able to do it. So I don't know about that intelligence study. It's probably the same study they tell people to get drunk and it's good for your heart. So now they're going back and saying that is not quite accurate.
That's a cup of wine, sir. Let me ask you this question, right? So Chris, you just made a very good point. But you made it towards like the I guess the elitism that happens in the academy, right? But let's take it one step further because you did say people with a lot of money, bro. You have these rappers out here that be rapping about certain subjects or whatever that of things that's gonna get you clicks, things that's gonna like rapping about lives that are not theirs or whatever, because a lot of them live in the suburbs and are not living in poverty, and their kids are in college. Right. Meanwhile, they're telling you to go hit the block and drink this and smoke that and do this, that, and forth. Right. What's y'all's thoughts on that? Because I know, you were leaning towards more love and music.
I mean, listen, I was talking to somebody about Atlanta and the rappers in Atlanta who came up through a bad school system, and actually now you have something. You succeeded in the rap game. And now you have something, right, in life. Now you're still that kid that grew up in Atlanta that went through a bad school system, but then you get married and you put your kids in a private school. They all got their kids in the same private school in Atlanta, right? So Babyface's kids went through this school and CeeLo's kids went through this school, but then the rappers the street rappers, the real kind of like gangster rappers they got kids in that school too, right? So they know enough to put their kids where they're going to get social training for the world. That they didn't get themselves, but we could keep going on and on about this. This is the battle I think we're always going to fight. Wanting to keep it real on one hand, and normalize everything that we do in our culture as a cultural thing and as good, and never get around to asking the question of, do we ever do any bad stuff in our culture that shouldn't be normalized?
Terrible.
Is there anything that we're just letting slide by just because we want to pull the whole world is racist thing? Listen, the world is racist.
Yeah.
And some of y'all are knuckleheads. Two things can be true. Two things can be true. The world can be racist, and some of y'all could be like on some real dumb, know what.
I let Reef have it every day. There is not a day that I don't get his work to Reef about what's happening in Philly and these kids, and it being damn near a genocide amongst youth in Philadelphia. And so, as we were talking about the center and BMAC 2023, can't wait whenever we get a date. But anyways,
he always just got to sneak one in.
He can't help himself. He's like,
so I'm nervous for port cities, right? And when I say port cities, I meaning the cities that are quote unquote urban-esque, black led, usually Democratic. Not that things don't happen in red states, but y'all get what I'm saying here. The crime is astronomical, right? But then when you start talking about the crime, then you got to start talking about the root issues and like root cause analysis or whatever. But at the end of the day, even after root cause analysis, you still got hundreds of people that are dying by murder, dying by guns every year, and it's taboo for us to talk about it. Why?
Lots of stuff is taboo because, first of all, it would be coming out of a place. I want to say part of this is the classism. It's not racism. Like within our own culture, just like in the other cultures, there's an upper middle class and middle class that have upper middle class and middle class concerns and norms and habits and ways of being. And we have that within, if you take white people out of the mix and take white world out of the mix, we have that within Black culture. Like within, we have this kind of middle class versus the underclass situation. No, we have middle class, working class, and underclass differences, I think, in values and expectations and norms. And it's our middle class that occupies a lot of the professional positions. So we can talk all this kind of like the world's racist stuff, but if we took white people out of it, our Black middle class that are college educated and degreed and run the banks, run the schools, run the different things, they bring with them some expectations and manners too that aren't just necessarily about race. It's a lot about class, right? And you all have heard me make this point before. A lot of our kids and our teachers are an economic mismatch, even in school districts where almost everybody's Black. Right, like in urban school districts where you got a large Black large Black workforce, does not necessarily mean that those kids are right. There, a lot of them are college educated, middle class, teaching kids who aren't on track to be. And there's a mismatch even in the way that they see the world in terms of manners and expectations and whatever. Now I don't know what point I'm making there, except to say that there's a deeper conversation here to be had, but I don't think teaching our kids that professionalism is racist is specific enough about which parts. like I want you to go to college. I want you to get a job. I want you to pass interviews. I want you, once you have a job, to keep it. I don't want people conspiring against you in the workplace. I don't want you offering them any type of fuel to help them sabotage you and your professional career because you don't know which fork to use. I mean, there's just things like in life that I could.
I still don't know what fork.
You know what I'm doing?
I think it's too many utensils on the table.
I mean with my fingers.
You don't need all of that.
Yeah, see, this is why
too many utensils. Like be kind to the dishwasher and the planet. You know what I mean? Like you don't need all that.
Let's see, y'all need to stop now.
Same fork will do the job.
Salad fork.
Use that way to this. Listen, I think it's complicated. I think some of it, yes. Helping students, I think this is part of education. Helping students navigate is part of education. And you talk about two truths at the same time, and it's a racist structure. And some of the Black folks who are in those middle classes, some of them have drunken they're drunk off of the racist stuff too. They've internalized some of the stuff. So all of it's not just a neutral classist type of thing. I don't know what
is that?
That's Ray partying. So imagine, like, yes, it's some of the middle class stuff, and we're just talking about Black community removing that, but it's hard to totally remove it if the Black people are still using some of those same paradigms and constructs, right? So even if I'm middle class, and we're all of us are Black in this building, but I'm using racist constructs to now project low expectation, blah, 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 and all the things. That's why mindset is so important, right? Because with a mindset that's healthy, then you're going to be able to navigate and be able to tell students, like, yes, here's what it is, and you have choices, right? Like, be able to say, not you're belittle them, you're less than, you're ignorant because of XYZ. Like, hey, here's what the game plan is, here's what it looks like, and you have a choice of how to show up, because we also have to acknowledge, like, there's plenty of studies show that the white boy without the education, without this, dressing all crazy, still might likely get the job just because your name is Raheem and his name is Tom.
Y'all ever play a sport in a game where you felt like the ref was on the other team's side?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Did you stop playing, or did you change your plays, or did you not play as hard? You played harder, right? Yeah. Like when you had one of those refs where you're like, oh yeah, the ref is in their pocket. Yep. The ref is in their pocket. You didn't be like, well, the whole game is bullshit. So I'm just gonna, no.
Some people do though.
Some people do, but they also like would they start looking for vulnerabilities. They start looking for what their plays are going to be, what their strategy is going to be, how they're going to play the game, how they're going to get to the end zone, that whole thing.
At the end of the day, it's the strategy.
Yeah.
The
Yeah, it's a
conversation,
strategy
the
thing.
strategies change, right? So like when you know that something like that is happening, then your whole game plan changes. So
All right. Well, I got one for y'all.
Yeah.
This one comes from Raymond, by the way, and me, and also. But talk about professionalism and language and blah blah blah. Let's talk about classroom management.
Well, I like to see you come up here and do one of these
What the
problems.
fuck up talking to me, Mr. Johnson, before I come knock the motherfucking glasses off your face, and that's on my dick or my head.
Didn't I tell you earlier today? I said,
Shut the fuck up talking to me!
Markel, I said I do not talk to you that way, and I would appreciate it if you did not talk
Shut the
to me
fuck
that
up
way.
talking to me!
I do not curse at you. Have I ever cursed at you?
Yes!
I have never cursed at you.
Yes, you have!
You know that's not true.
I bet I can put up some problems that you won't even know, Mr. Johnson.
You probably could.
Exactly.
Come on, put some problems on the board.
Fuck that.
I tell you.
Fuck you, fuck you,
Give you
fuck
some.
you, fuck you. Oh, that's
Get away from your computer.
Shut the fuck up!
Take the coat off.
That's why you don't know how to do the problem.
Take the coat off.
I don't want you to know.
Take the coat off.
I don't got to.
Take the coat off. I'm asking.
Now I don't want to keep going with this, but this is a realistic situation. Right.
This happens in schools every day.
This happens in schools every day. We could talk all the like peaches and cream we want to talk about. We could talk about forming relationships. We could talk about bonding. We could talk about like being authentic and real and bringing hip hop into classrooms. And we could talk about dancing and shuffling and doing whatever, doing secret handshakes up with your kids before they come in through the door. We talk about a lot of things. And what I know for a fact is there's lots of educators that listen to us and others. When they hear that, they're doing two things in their brain. They're like, it's cool to listen to y'all and everything, but you're also not realistic. You're not in my classroom specifically. Like it sounds all good what y'all got going on or what you did or whatnot, but you're not being realistic about what is going on in my situation. Now I look at that clip that we just saw, and I've got like 80 different angles to take that on, right? Ray, when you posted this, you posted around trauma and you posted around knowing what's behind the behavior and knowing more, like thinking deeper about these situations than the reactionary.
That wasn't where I was. That wasn't always where I was at. It took growth for me in terms of me to get there, right? So like initially, like so if you when I first started teaching in 2003, had I encountered that interaction, it's totally different from how I would have been teaching in 2023. Right.
Well, you probably would have burned out because the brother that came in, the second brother that came in was going to he was going to be the tougher guy, right, of the ones and whatnot. And I'm not going to go on with the clip, but he gets treated the same way throughout he's not coming in being Joe Clark or something like.
In 2020, in 2003, I would have flipped the fuck out, and I probably would have got fired because I wouldn't have accepted that type of behavior from a child to me. But
not just one. Like multiple kids in classroom.
Again, it took a whole lot of growth from me in order to kind of understand that that's a kid crying out and that's a kid that's asking or seeking help, right? And so there's a couple things that happened in that clip that I think that we need to unpack, right? First and foremost, when he first cursed the teacher out and he was like, I put that on my dead grandma, right? So when he put it on his dead grandma, that made me know that there was somebody in his life that he loved. Right, that meant something to him, right? And so then, as I started thinking about that, I'm like, well, damn, the grandma can't be too much older than the teacher, right? Or if she's younger, or whatever, like then we need to know what happened to the grandma. So there's a whole lot of layers, and there was a whole lot of pain that was expressed by that young gent, right? And so, but here's the thing, though, Chris, and this is where I bring in the Black church. I had that pain, but I had so much respect based off of how I was brought up and how I was taught to engage with folks that I would have never, ever, I would have never expressed myself in that manner due to the fact that was a Black man and that was an elder, right? So like, there's a disconnect between what's happening with today's youth and what's happening with and what's happening in our community. And until we as a Black community, us on this podcast, folks that are listening to us, peel back the layers to determine when this disconnect happened and how we can kind of mend that fracture, we're gonna keep getting this.
So both of you, well, I know you for sure, Sharif, and I think to some extent you too, Ray, have had experience with turnarounds.
Yeah.
So let's say this is what you're turning around. Like you come to a school, this is the prevailing culture of a school. This is the prevailing classroom situation. The educators that you just saw, that's what they look like and that's what they sound like or whatnot. What's the turnaround strategy here?
Man, it's so much, man. I mean, every time, I mean, that's the second time seeing it, and each time I'm like it hurts my insides to, to see that kind of stuff. And this is it's not just a realistic situation. It's like Ray said, this is occurring. And I think the first time I saw this clip, it was, somebody had tagged it, "This is why we need Black men teachers," and I'm just like, this is not why we need Black men teachers.
Yeah.
I'm like, no, this is not. I was like, there's such and a couple things. I'm gonna be a little critical of the two brothers who are in there. This is also why professional development and stuff is so important. This is why. Like, as far as like, there's a technical skill to working with a kid. Like I'm making a lot of assumptions. I'm going to assume there's a classroom for students that needed emotional and behavioral support. Okay, that's one. And again,
I like that assumption.
I'm saying, but I'm making assumptions just from watching, listening, trying to understand what the math problem was.
Yeah.
So that's one thing. And the fact that it was, looking at it, there was a low expectation. Like, you know what, this is okay, and we're going to manage it within this room in some kind of way. Like, no, like the number one about turning around the school, what you're doing is turn around a series of classrooms. Whether it's a hallway, it's a learning environment. Classroom is a learning environment. School is a learning environment. The expectation is we don't bang like that in here. So I'm not going to listen to a bunch of 10 and 11-year-olds or 18-year-olds sitting there dropping the F-bomb in my classroom, and I'm going to continue to have a conversation as if we're just watching a movie, like everything's chill. Like, no. Like,
what you going to do, though? What are you going to do, though?
So this is the thing. Like, so if you have that type of turnaround, one, you're setting. The first thing I'm doing is I'm going back over the expectation. One, you have to set the expectation. Here's where the bar is. Here's what a learning environment and community is. And here's what I'm going to deliver. And here's what I'm expecting you to do. We are part of the community. So the first thing is setting the bar and the expectation and not wavering it. You could do that with love, but the expectation me just looking at that is like, this ain't the first day they using the F-bomb and cussing everybody out. And it's more or less like it's negotiable. No, this is one of the non-negotiables. We will not do that in here. Right. And so the first thing I would have been doing,
what happens, though?
Back to,
where do you go, though?
There are multiple things. Like, one, the brother came in. That means, listen, this young man is coming out of the classroom, and there may be a conversation. Again, it's the technical.
You know what? This is
part of it, right? Like,
and this isn't to push back on you.
Social worker. I don't know.
This is not to push back on you.
I mean, Chris, before you go in, I just want to say, when those people who listen and say like, "Oh, this ain't my classroom," I've been in your classroom. I didn't teach in North Dakota. I taught in West Philly. All three of my schools are in West Philly.
No, but this is the point that I want to make. It's possible that this classroom is the classroom of last resort, meaning you do pull these students out of other classrooms, but they do all end up together somewhere.
Did you hear anything about consequences or expectations?
I did not, but this is what I'll say. It's a good point, but I will say this much. When I see multiple kids that have the same type of pattern like this, like these two kids had or whatnot, and they're exhibiting the same behavior, whatnot, sometimes it might be an out of control classroom. Sometimes, though, this might be the place where you put everybody once you've taken them out of the other classrooms. It may be the emotion.
That's why I started with that. I said it may be the emotion. I had emotional support classrooms in my school. Like we had multiple sometimes. And sometimes we also had alternate placement, We're students who are just like, you know what, this is not the most conducive environment. You need a higher level of support. And so then we're working with the family and saying, like, here's the higher level of support that this child needs, right? Because this is, again, it goes back, but again, and I don't want to assume that they had IEPs or anything like that. What I'm just saying, like, there are ways to speak, but I'm just saying, like, at the end of the day, I did not see high expectations projected in the language, in the thing. Like the one brother showed up, you know, a little bit after the clip cut off, like, you going to jail. Like, I mean, come on. Like this, like, even for him, what are the expectations? Is that the expectation? You're going to come in, support this classroom by threatening that kid to go to jail for what? Because what did he do? Right? Like,
but you know what?
The whole thing is problematic, not just the kid.
There's
the
no
adults were
consequence,
not
though.
equipped.
There's no
adults were not equipped
because the adults don't have any consequence that can matter.
What? You gotta at least have expectations and stuff. Like,
you can expect all you want. You can expect all you want. If a kid is dropping the F-bomb and you can't do anything, you can't pull them out, you can't whoop their ass, you can't call their mama because their mama don't care.
Why do you need to whoop their
Chris? First of all, let's we need to do a show on this, because whipping their ass. Yeah. The jails are full of kids who got their asses whipped. It does not work. If it worked, why are they in jail? Why were they in jail? I used to ask them when I would interview people who were locked up. I would ask them, "Were you beat?" They're like, "Yeah, I was beat all the time. I was beat with this. I was beat with that." They were still. That's not the.
Y'all not realistic. Y'all not realistic.
Bro, listen, I'm so realistic because we've seen it. We actually had emotional. You know what? I wish I would have had somebody from our team who actually worked with students with the deep emotional support, so they could have been on the show to actually talk about what they've done to change. And again, things aren't like overnight, but what I'm saying is, like, you got to at least he didn't even reference, like, hey, what are our classroom expectations? Hey, what about that is inappropriate? And it wasn't everybody. There were 2 kids.
Bro, listen,
there were 2.
Let me tell you something. I don't
assume there were 10.
I don't know where this camera came from. Right, that's the first thing. I don't know where the camera came from, and the reason
why are you talking about?
That was one of the kids.
Oh, one of the kids, yeah. Bystander.
Okay, and the reason why I say that is because most of the time when you catch kids like that, they ain't lying about something. So if a kid say that you did something, then more than likely you did something, or you did something close to it, right? And so when he was like, you know, did I curse at you? And the kid was like, yeah, yeah, like he said it, like it was so knee jerk. It was so knee jerk. I was. It kind of made me believe that.
Maybe kind of made me think the same thing. It did.
Maybe he did say something that he had no business saying. But what I will say is this: I know where I would have been at that night if that had happened in my class. I know I would have been eating dinner at somebody's house, and we would have been having a conversation with somebody's parent. I don't give a shit what time they got off of work. If it was at 10 o'clock, I was gonna be there, and we was gonna have a conversation about what occurred in my classroom, and it wasn't gonna occur again. And that's the thing. That's the thing, Reef. It's like, how many of these people are just accepting that, going home, having their self-care, and then coming back the next day to the same kind of abuse? Or are you being proactive? Are you making phone calls to parents? Are you getting people on the phone? Are you getting people that love this kid and explaining to them this is exactly what occurred, right? Because a lot of times you got folks that are not even making these phone calls. And so when a kid goes home, kid tells his side of the story, parents believe whatever the kid says or whatever, and there's no checking in. There's no relationship between the teachers and the school, and the parents, right? Yeah. And so there's no way to triangulate what's happening in these classrooms. But me, I'm pulling.
This is what I would say. Both of you are parents, and both of you are educators. I'm a parent, but I've never ran a school. I've never ran a classroom. I've never had 30 kids in a classroom where I've had to manage not just teaching them, but also manage how things work, the flow of things, like the culture, whatnot. So it feels a little bit like a magician thing. Like you got to be juggling multiple things at once. Not only do you have to teach well.
That's why they deserve all the respect when they're so effective. And
when they're effective, yeah, add that part. When they're effective. When they're not effective, they deserve what they get. But this is my point in saying that as a father and a person on the outside. There are certain things you wouldn't have done as a child, not because of what the educators were doing in the classroom, but because you came from a world of expectations outside of that were more deadly than the ones in that classroom. right? Now I know I was laughing and I was joking. I wasn't meaning that the teacher should whoop the kid's ass, right?
Yes,
Like
you were.
y'all take this stuff too
Yes, you were.
seriously. Y'all take
Yes,
this
you
too.
were.
Y'all take it too literal.
Because
I am just saying there
corporal
is.
punishment happened in Louisiana, and that's gonna
And
be.
I don't support that at all. I don't support any of that. And honestly, I'm using it as comedic effect. But I will say this though: when you come from a household of expectations or whatnot,
I think you're just gonna have to take the buttons away from him.
I know, because it just sounds crazy. When you come from a home set of expectations, the school set of expectations is secondary, which is why when a teacher says, "Do you want me to call home?" You straighten up, right? In a lot of cases, right? When you take that away as an option, like call my mama, I don't care. My mama will come down here and cut you. Well, okay, then let's just make this a prophecy. Then that's just what's going to happen for you. I already can call what your life is going to be, right? I'm not saying that I want it to be that way. I'm just saying it is what it is, right? Like we can.
Let's unpack that. What do you mean? What the life is going to be like? What are you saying here?
I am saying that there is a scientific ability to predict where people are going to end up in life based on different markers and factors that are going on with them in their life. And if you are a scientist, and it was your job to predict, and you looked at certain behaviors or certain things that people do or whatnot, you'll be very good at predicting where they're going to end up in life or whatnot. Which is why the rich do one thing to try and give their kids every advantage and put them on every kind of track for every type of thing for as early as kindergarten or before. And why everybody else is in a rat race to try and figure out what those enablers are for success. And then there are some kids that are completely naked to the system. They like have none of the enablers going on or whatnot. When I see a classroom like this, I feel like you guys would have a different answer than I would have. Y'all would have a different answer than I would, because you've run schools, you've run classrooms, you know that you have to figure it out. You're going to have to figure it out. But I look at that dude trying to teach that class, and I'm looking at and seeing on his face like silent resignation. He died on the inside already. He knows he's not going to get anything successful out of this classroom. You can look at him and just see he's dead on the inside. I don't know how y'all feel, but it feels to me like he knows what the score is.
I think a clip like that, it's hard to kind of gather, what somebody's thoughts are or whatever. Like we don't know what kind of day he was having. We don't know what kind of we don't know the extraneous factors that were occurring in this classroom, right? So like I want to be on the positive end of this. I want to.
You don't think you know what that man was thinking to himself?
I mean, the one thing I would say about it, I do agree. Like it's hard to see.
His brother was saying, "I went to college for this." That's what he's saying.
I mean, at some point, yeah, he may very well. But I think the other piece is what I also want to recognize is like how, like he for the most part he maintained his composure, right? Like he didn't, because we've seen other videos where they're cussing right back at the kid and all that kind of stuff, right? And so I would say that's for one. But I would also say like there's probably a level of professional development that has not been had in that environment. Mm-hmm. And I think the resignation that I saw, that like being resigned to something, was around like, this is the normal that we're subjecting other students to, that we're subjecting the learning and culture of the environment. Because quite frankly, yes, I agree with you, all the things about the parent. And I've also had, as a school, in all three schools that I was in, we also had families that we knew we couldn't get the level of partnership that we wanted, the kid deserved, and maybe even that the parent would have wanted to if they were in their best state, and it still didn't mean that we were going to lower the bar for what we expected in the learning environment.
I would say,
shove, like we are in this space. You're agreeing to send your child here, and there's going to be a bar. And again, it doesn't mean that it's going to be like there's going to be no profanity or nothing is ever going to happen wrong. Like, no, it just doesn't mean that at all. It's still going to happen. Right.
But so Michelle Johnson,
you still have a bar that you're pointing to and refocusing everybody, and there's a consequence.
I want to get Michelle Johnson in here. I love her quote. She says, kids who have parents with low expectations can be educated at high levels. Many kids want a different life trajectory. They need a path. I love that. Our good friend Tanae Hamilton is checking in from the motherland. And if you've been watching her, You can see on her Facebook she's been chronicling her time in the motherland, and it looks just beautiful and amazing. And she's still checking in on the 8 Black Hands show. We got Sister Elaine Wells, Sister Mama Toya, Sister Jamoke. Everybody is in tonight. If y'all see this, please share the show, share it with friends and families, and push it out there. And it is good to see you. We have been watching all the comments and trying to get them up on the screen. I feel like I'm losing tonight. I'm losing the battle because
but you're making a lot of good points, Chris. I think it's just because I had emotional support classrooms and because I had to turn around 2 schools with a team, and I agree with what Ray said. Like, and I told y'all this before.
Wait, what? You agree with what Ray said? Damn, we got to mark this in history.
He had a sentence in there that I agreed with. You know what I mean? About just where was the pain of that child coming from? And part of like our learning and development as educators, we have to understand and be able to unpack that. And again, this is January now. We're talking about these are things that should be occurring in the summer, all professional development year round, all those kind of things, right? And again, I wasn't in a school that did not have students that needed emotional and behavioral health support. Right. And I remember the first time, my first turnaround school, when I talked to the students and I had them in the auditorium and I said, listen, this is going to be one of the best middle schools in this city. And they cracked up like an auditorium full of middle school kids, laugh, El Mackey, oh, what are you talking about? Where'd you come from? Blah, blah, blah. Like if they couldn't even fathom that a school could be turned around, that they went in. And some of them told me after, like, my mom told me like how this school was when she was little, blah, 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 all those kind of things. But we still came back to like, listen, I love you and you deserve better. Like making sure they also understand like the learning environment that they deserve, the learning that they deserve, their aspirations, all of that is part of how do you like really nurture a culture. But you can't let a culture just be assaulted nonstop with 10 F-bombs. And again, it doesn't mean that an emotional, any classroom that it doesn't happen. But the fact that there was no kind of redirection around that. And the biggest thing, not saying F you, but it was about your coat. Like to me, these are things where it goes back to training and development of adults. You're coming, your biggest thing is that young boy got a coat on and he just said F you. And like I'm just like, yo, this is because this is now normal for that classroom. That's the sign to me. That's normal in the classroom. And the most important thing is that you don't have your coat on. Like that's nuts. That's
you can
nuts.
say F me. You can say F me all you want, but just do it with your coat off.
Yeah. Have your coat off when you say it. We'll have it.
Okay.
Like come on, man.
So
this is. I just like talk about professional.
Y'all are apologists.
Talk about professionalism. That's unprofessional education right there, bro.
You're not wearing your jacket. You're not wearing your coat in here. Oh, that's racist. No, F you. Anyways, listen.
No.
So this, I want to say for the record, this one came from Ray. This was Ray's video. So I just want to say for the record, like this isn't me, the Bayesian on the show. It's not the Bayesian on the show pulling up these things and whatnot. This one was Ray, and I think professionalism was Ray too. But you're not off the hook, Sharif, because this week Sharif sent me this mess here. Why Black boy
Dr.
sneakers
Moss.
should matter to educators, written by a school. Can I get through this intro, please?
No, because I need to talk about your rebuttal.
Well, we will come to it.
All right.
Dr. Felton Moss or Felton Moss, I don't know if he's a doctor or whatnot.
Dr.
Principal wrote this article. Yeah, for the ASCD, very esteemed professional outlet for people that have a background in running schools or leading schools. So they're not talking from a perspective of not knowing. These are trained and esteemed people. So he wrote this thing around Black boy sneakers should matter to educators. And the setup for the piece is basically that he had an experience in his life with sneakers, with a young man with sneakers that kind of changed him after he had the experience. Basically, here's the thread. He took too little time to care about what the sneakers meant to the student. And he actually replicated some things that educators do when they're taking away the humanity of young Black boys in schools. And he uses Dr. Bettina Love's work on abolitionist teaching as part of his reason why he thinks we should really get down to the valid cultural expressions of young people as a way of us like accessing them and having a more authentic relationship with them, and not doing everything we just said in this show, like just going after the surface stuff or whatnot, trying to think deeper about what these things mean to the young people. And I mean, I agreed with most of what he said, right? Like, the one thing that I thought was odd was the very first sentence, which I always think we are putting the wrong things in contest with each other. He says, after decades of reform initiatives, from No Child Left Behind Act to the Every Student Succeeds Act, challenges persist for Black boys in their quest for academic freedom and success. Countless studies still conclude that being Black and male in America's schools is a problem. Many Black boys are dehumanized before they ever enter the classroom because of deeply entrenched stereotypes and biases. And my only problem with the framing of this is it's all true what he just said, but I don't understand why it has to be in contest with major federal legislation like No Child Left Behind and Every Student Succeed Acts, which put pressure on schools to do better for the very students that he's talking about. So it feels like a dodge. If we could just handle the cultural stuff, we don't have to worry about the outcome stuff. We don't have to worry about the other stuff. He could have wrote this whole piece, this whole thing, and not made it about the school reform stuff at all. That's just me talking. And y'all know that I wrote a rebuttal piece to this. But anyways, Sharif, tell me what your takeaway, like, did I get it wrong? Like the thing I pulled out of this, like, what were you seeing in this that was positive as you read through it?
Yeah, no, and I agree with most of what Dr. Moss has in there as well. And I do think I agree with, yes, there's harm with a lot of the federal policy because it's so far removed from like what's happening in classrooms and schools. There were like unfunded mandates and all these type of things. So yes, I agree with certain aspects of it. And I think there's also just I agree with you. We have to be careful about that because there are a lot of like, I have to work with people who, some of them are like, we shouldn't even test kids at all. And they're not even recognizing that, how harmful that would be for Black children in a majority white institution, not just who's leading the classroom, but who's leading schools, who's leading districts, who's making curricular decisions, who's on the school boards, who are the superintendents, all of that, right? Like, to me, that's, absolutely crazy. I think what's interesting also is just, and I love Dr. Moss, I think we're all different as educators. Like, for me, as an educator, the kid, my thing would have been like, you know what? Being on time is more important than anything. And to me, and I would share this, I'm like, hey, you know what? To me, that's more important. And if you want to make sure that there are no creases in your shoes, what do you have to do? Let's back map this. What do you have to do to get from class point A to point B to be on time, right? To me, it's all about strategy and navigating and choices, because a kid may be late and it's just like, all right, what's the consequence that you may get, and what's the reward you may get, even if it's your own sense of fulfillment. So that would have been my approach about, because that kids was just like, hey, well, I'm gonna be late. This is like, all right, well, what can you do about your choices so that you are on time? Do you not talk to your friends as long so you can get to class on time? Do you get organized? Do you decide when to go to your locker? There's so many things that I think I would have dove into that would have been beyond the shit. And the kids would have known, like, shoes, like, that ain't my thing. And it wasn't my hook. And I agree with him that finding ways to find a hook. Some of my ways to engage in kids was because they knew I was the exact opposite of what they had, whether it was music or whether it was their shoes. And that was that's where we built a relationship. Like, it's like a sports team. Their favorite team is this. My favorite team is that. I'm not going to build my relationship with you because now I'm going to love your team too. Like, no, I still like my team. My team is better. And we're going to talk about it. And this is how we developed our relationship. So everybody has a different way. But I think a lot of what he put in there is critically
Ray,
important.
you more of a sneakerhead. So Sharif just mentioned, like, so Sharif and me have a different relationship to sneakers. I didn't do a very good job in the setup to say the exchange that he had with the young person was being late to class because he didn't want to walk too fast because he didn't want to put creases in his Air Force Ones. So he was doing that duck walk. He was doing that duck walk thing that people do with their Air Force Ones because they want to put a crease in it. The piece that I wrote was like, the piece I wrote was very Bill Cosby, and that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. And it's going on in my own house. Like we done bought crease protectors. When my wife told me that
What is
we
that?
bought crease protect, Sharif, bruh. Literally,
What
you
is
can
that?
buy these things. You can buy these
Uh-huh.
things to put into these damn tennis shoes to stop them from getting a crease on top. So you spend extra money. First of all, you don't spend too much money on these sweatshop shoes that have been manufactured in sweatshops by 8-year-olds in another country who ain't got no food, and they're selling them. They're $8 a pair. They're selling them to you for 120 to 150 to 200 and more. And then you wearing these stupid shoes, and you still got to go to Amazon and buy some protectors.
So when they
that you
take them
slide
off, they
into
put
something.
something in.
No. Well, they put something in them so that when they walk, they don't bend their foot like that. And
Oh,
that
while they're
don't
wearing
increase
it, it goes in there while they're wearing it.
bruh. It gets dumber and dumber. The more we explain it, it gets dumber and dumber and dumber, right?
This is get off my lawn
Yo,
talk right here.
yo,
That's
that's
happening.
Right? It is
Listen,
get off my lawn. Get off
it's
my lawn with your damn
all
Holocaust
type of
shoes in one
strategies
case. You got
to liberate the
Kanye
dollars out of your
Holocaust
pocket.
shoes. But see, this is where I sound old. And I wrote this piece in response of like,
And you sound
okay,
old.
I might sound old, but this is what I even referenced Bill Cosby in the piece, which was a little bit problematic, but I just listen. All I was saying was, I get trying to understand kids and their culture, but associating sneaker culture, a $1 billion industry that has been forced on them to make them consumers of one of the dumbest products ever, with the least kind of financial upswing on it ever, and conflating that as their culture, like the
Listen.
motherland, like someone in the motherland invented sneakers or some dumb shit like that, is like the most capitalistic dumb thing I've ever heard in my life. And people get killed over this. They die over this stuff. They don't get an education over this shit, right? Bruh, stop it.
So I just want to correct the record, right?
Correct me.
Ray
Correct me.
sells used shoes, so
Hey,
he's
resell on shoes is a very lucrative business, right? So like before, I would hear people say, "Oh, you spending $100 on those shoes, and you're not getting nothing out of it, or whatever," and that was a valid argument then. But now you got websites like StockX and like all these other resell things, and then you got folks that are limiting releases and like doing all these other things. So sneakers is now a lucrative business. And so before, you hear people say, "Oh, you got these new Jordans, but you ain't got no life insurance." Hey, Jordans is your life insurance now, baby. You got some J1s that you can sell for like $10,000. That could pay for a funeral. I'm just saying. But in the Dr. Moss, Dr. Felton Moss's article, he said something that resonated for me. He said, for many Black boys, sneakers are statements that define their personality and character and speak to their self-worth and self-respect. And so that was interesting to me because we have a uniform policy at our school, and we used to only allow Black sneakers, right? And so my dean of students, who's a former Division I basketball player, came to me. And he was like, "Bro, we're both sneakerheads, and these kids use sneakers as an outlet to be able to express themselves. So how do you feel about allowing kids to wear whatever sneakers they want to wear?" And I was like, we went to this uniform policy because of the fact that we don't want kids to feel like away. Like if some kid is able to afford Jordans and some kid is able to afford Payless, even though Payless is out of business now, you can see the differences in terms of like income and like all those other things and whatnot. And so then the focus is no longer on education. The focus is on all kinds of things that are outlying issues that are not education. But what I will say is this: you have like Vans and like very affordable Converse and like all these other things, because sneakers are different now. It used to be you had to have a pair of $120, $150 sneakers in order for you to be the cool kid. Now it's no longer that way. You could have a $25 pair of Vans and people still think you cool and like all these other things. It's just different now.
Yeah, I mean, in the comments, Michelle Johnson wrote that this seems like to be like a privileged thing, like a thing that happens amongst the privileged. It's interesting that many in the privileged, and especially the middle class and upper class, are untagging themselves, meaning they're going with things like Vans and more downstream things as kind of a way to show that they are, nondescript when it comes to these things. And as always, the people that have the least often are investing in
so true.
are investing in the culture. I mean, listen, Dr. Umar does this whole thing
Don't do that.
on black people are the
I
biggest.
don't know if he defended a dissertation. There's some conversation that's happening amongst the black elite in the academy, and so
anyways,
this ain't that space.
Dr. Umar. I'm still gonna make this point. Dr. Umar says that basically black folks are the biggest purchasers of Mercedes-Benz, for instance.
That's not just Dr. Umar. That's fact.
I know, but he runs down a whole list of them where black folks are. And it's because there's a history to it. There's a video that I think I showed on this show once called Selling the Negro. And it was an old instructional video on how you sell to black people. And it was basically telling corporate America, you're missing out on a big market here. And what it said was they like symbols and signs of success because they've had so little of it that you can sell them anything. You can sell them Westinghouse. You can sell them certain types of appliances and blah, blah, because they're so thirsty to look like they're part of the mainstream and part of the upper class or whatnot, that you can sell them on brands is basically what it says. You can just sell them on brands. And Dr. Umar kind of repeats some of that too. When I think about the sneaker thing, right? Like there was a point at which people were literally getting killed for Jordans, right? And Nike was raking in the dollars, raking in the doughs. Shaq came along at some point and Shaq was like, I'm gonna put out a pair of affordable shoes, right? You remember this, right? I was selling them at Kmart. Right, like I'm not gonna do the Jordan thing. I'm gonna sell them somewhere else. I had so much respect for that. Now I'm not saying anybody was running to try and get them plastic shoes out of Kmart.
He made a grip.
He did make a lot of money out of them though, and I respected him for saying I'm not gonna put something on the feet of kids that's gonna get them killed from corporate America. Right? We have this conversation a lot of times. I get it. I don't think hot take. I don't think it's our culture. I don't think that sneakers are like organically grown out of black culture. I believe like a lot of things, we can fashion anything into something cool for the world. We could take the scraps off of a pig and make it worth eating. We can take the little chump change that you throw off of your food table and make a whole cuisine out of it that has the whole world set on fire by it. That's unhealthy for a lot of people.
Oh,
but I'm not going to say it's our culture.
I would disagree. And the reason why I would disagree, I would disagree because of this, right? So Nike is what? 1970s, early 80s when there was some popularity with Nike, right? But Nike really didn't boom and transform until those first Air Forces came out that preceded the Jordans. So I think this is around 1983. They put out some Forces and they moved from being a runner's shoe to moving into basketball, right? And so we know that Jordan, and if you look at the documentary, there was he could have either went with Adidas or he could have went with Jordan. I mean, he could have went with Nike, right? He ended up going with Nike, even though Adidas was trying to give him a whole shitload more money. But he went with man, that dude's a billionaire now, and you got LeBron who's now a billionaire, and so this has become like the culture. This is a cultural thing right here, man. It's not just this is who name me a white person that has a sneaker named after them or a sneaker on a major like Adidas, Reebok, Nike that has become a billionaire because of that sneaker.
Name me a $1 billion sneaker making manufacturing company that sells its stock on the New York Exchange that is black. Don't tell me about the people they hire to put their names on things so that they can sell stuff to us, so that they can sell the Negro. Like, listen, I'm glad LeBron got his bag for putting his name on something. He don't own Nike. He don't own Adidas. He don't own Converse. He don't own any of them. And go and look at the New York Stock Exchange of who owns what and who's making the money. They have found a way to sell us constantly, right? And we are sucking it down like Jim Jones Kool-Aid all over the place, pretending like we don't live in a consumerist capitalist society that is reselling us constantly because they slap some Negro's name on it. And then we tell our kids this is what it's all about, to the point where they value that more than they value getting to class on time, where they value that more than they value actually owning the company, not consuming from the company, right? We are producing consumers. We're not producing producers.
Hey, listen,
right? The people who ask the real questions, like, I could play for the NFL or the NBA, but when do I get to own the NFL and the NBA? I could make a record for Warner Brothers, but when do I get to own Warner Brothers, right? I could buy Stephon Marbury's shoe or whoever's shoe or whatnot. When do I get to own Nike, right?
No, well, Steph's shoe Steph shoes is a little bit different, right? Because like
His cheaper, right?
he did the indie joint. He went the indie route, and so you know his shoes was like maybe $20, but he made like $18 off the shoe. Because again,
I
you
love
know,
it.
it was like $2 to make the shoe, and then you know the markup or whatever. But like he was smart in terms of using his popularity in order to do exactly what you just said. So there's some people that think outside of the box. I know Kyrie is working with a black designer now since him and Nike both you know
I love it. Making his own, right?
He's making his own now. And then but I wanted to say something to you, right? Because you know we like nice things, right? Reef don't.
We do like nice things.
Yeah. Reef don't.
We do like.
And so I had a choice. I was like,
I
yo,
like
Reef
nice
likes
books.
nice things
I like
too.
nice books.
He do.
either
He do.
I was gonna get a Toomey bag or I was gonna get
Oh my gosh.
a Telfar bag. And I decided to go with the Telfar bag because you know it's black owned and I wanted to do that.
Well, listen, Sharif does like nice things as
do
much
like
as he
nice
likes
things.
to. He
Don't
tries
hate
to. He likes nice things. Elaine Wells has a comment here, and I'm going to leave this alone. But you know, I actually bring this up because I think there's a mismatch of the values of what we're teaching our kids versus like you can teach them to be consumers or you can teach them to be producers. You can teach them to make the thing and take the dollars off the table, or you can teach them to continuously be the Ponzi's of a major play that's being played on all of us. I'm not saying any of us are out of this, and I'm not saying my own family, my own kids, right? This piece that I wrote about this week in response to this was I never had a pair of these $100 plus shoes until I was 50 years old. Like I didn't grow up with
Hey, I just saw you in a mortgage statement.
Bruh, listen, I'm telling you, for my entire life, if I told you what the most I ever paid for a pair of shoes was, all the way until my 50s, it would probably trip you out, right? Like, because this was just so normalized for some people. Like $100 plus shoes for a lot of people was just a normal thing.
Hey, do you
right?
find yourself overcompensating and treating yourself real nice based off of what you had to go through growing up? I do.
I still will look at a thing and be like, woo. I mean, it'll be something I could totally afford. And I'll look at it and go, woo, that's too rich for my blood. You know, like especially when it comes to shoes. Like, so I've just now given myself permission. Like, you know why I'm giving myself more permission now with shoes is because I'm old and, you know, creaks and you start creaking and stuff like that. And you like, life is too short for bad shoes.
Yeah.
You know, like cheap shoes sometimes cause you more problems than good. But my point is with the youth and with the young people, are we always teaching them the right lesson? Now, Michelle Johnson just pulled one way out. She said British Knights. Oh my God, I forgot about British Knights was. What's that? Oh, bruh, that was the thing for a minute. But I wanted to get this Elaine Wells quote. Yeah, I want to get her quote in here because this is something that totally makes the point for me and drives me absolutely crazy. This is one of my spots. She said, "Truth, Chris." See, that's it. That's it right there. She said, "Truth." No. Let me say the rest of the point. She said, "It's the same with companies and designers now trying to make Islamic headwear and sell it to Muslim women when they not too long ago they didn't want us even wearing them, right?" And that's also the thing. If you study hair, if you just study where the hair comes from, and what the black hair market looks like and who controls it and who is X'd out of it completely. There are black hair selling shops that can't get in the Korean hair cartel, even though we are the main destination for the global trade of hair. You have black hair providers or black hair companies or whatnot that can't get in the cartels to get first dibs on the money and the profits or whatnot. And we're the only ones really actually funding that entire industry of things. You have had black hair shops close because they've been blackballed by they did something wrong or they raised the price or they did something the wrong way and whatnot. This is my point. Stop selling us. Stop selling us and stop selling us down the river. And they will continue doing it as long as we continue participating in it. I think we should teach the youth some financial defense strategies that we're not teaching them right now. That's my only point. And the mass consumerism, starting with sneakers, I think is one crime. It's a criminal example. Now y'all don't have to agree with me because Ray's still
I
gonna go
agree
buy
with
his
that.
Holocaust shoes tomorrow.
Yeah, listen, I mean, I've never had, a lot of the sneakers that they talk about, the bag he's just mentioned. I've heard it to me, but where did I learn that from? Eight Black Hands. Before that, I never heard of this stuff. You know what I mean? So I think it's interesting that sometimes, a particular style, a particular clothing, like a sneaker, becomes, oh, that's part of the culture. When, when I think of culture, I think of things that are just a lot deeper than that. What I think is part of our culture is, as you mentioned, Chris, like being able to style something, to be able to create something, to make something hip or fly, or I think that's part of the culture. It doesn't necessarily mean that the sneaker has become, super popular, but that has more to do with capitalism than black culture. I think is they can, as you described, you can touch things and you have such a creativity in your being, in your orientation, that you can add this, just this level of creativity and popularize things that are touched, right? Like it's like, it's the like almost a Midas touch, except the gold always goes to somebody else. So we got like a different
Exactly.
type of Midas touch. Like everything we touch
Oh,
turns to gold, but it's someone else's gold. Like that's the problem.
right.
That to me is, just looking at it. And I don't have like expensive sneakers. Now it wasn't part of our thing, you know. And so looking at it is just like, you know what, we had a Midas touch, unfortunately.
And this is why, and as we
It's
end here, I know we got to wrap up with final thoughts. This is what I say, like bringing this all together. This is why we need Black schools. This is why we need our own schools. This is why we need Black educational capital. Because as states are starting to outlaw what can be taught and what can be said in schools and in classrooms, we need the freedom to be able to teach our kids that when it comes to diamonds and minerals and things that are used for cell phones and everything that we have, Africa is not a poor country. I mean, not a poor continent. Africa is the richest continent on planet Earth, and there should not be any poverty there. And every day, there are young Black children who are digging through rocks and mines and dirt and whatnot to pull up things to go somewhere else for somebody else's benefit. And for us, for the Negro system of the United States to actually be participant in the consumerism that is actually in oppressing the entire world could be a lesson. That could be a high school lesson. You could do a whole thing on that. You could do a whole series on that. You could start teaching Black kids from 8 years on that that this is the way a system works. This is where the mines are. This is where the diamonds come from. This is where the minerals that power your cell phone come from. This is how you are participating in a system that is actually, if we want to talk about, get old school about it and talk about Pan-Africanism, this is actually what you are doing to contribute to there being a first, second, and third world on this planet or whatnot. You can't teach that in every place anymore. There's states you literally couldn't teach that. You would have to teach that in a private school, or you'd have to teach that in a school where you have complete control over the curriculum.
And out of school, and out of school time, after school,
and out of school
Saturdays,
time. Absolutely,
summer, own it.
Absolutely,
we have to own that space, and particularly in those areas.
All right, final thoughts, brothers, so we can round this show out. Today we talked about professionalism and whether or not it is racism. We talked about classroom management and what we should do when classrooms are completely out of control. We have young people that are exhibiting lots of trauma, and whether or not those schools can be turned around and those classrooms can be turned around simply by setting high expectations. And then we rounded out and ended this talk around the educators' ideas about how we can access authentic conversation and authentic relationships with young people versus the Cliff Huxtable way of looking at the world, which is, y'all, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Sneakers, blah, blah, blah. The Theo, that's the dumbest thing I ever heard. Right?
He back on tour this year.
Anyway, so who wants to go first? Round out final thoughts for the night. So
I mean, no, this is a good show. I mean, it's definitely a lot of topics that touch us in so many different ways. I think at the end of the day, all this is about like strategy and and technique and how do we implement those strategies. How do we implement strategies to turn around classrooms? How do we ensure that our students are understand the context that they are operating in, and make decisions of what to fight, choosing their battles, what battles sometimes it's a strategy. Hey, get in and then do your damage. And sometimes it's like, hey, I don't even want to go in because that's, as Ray says, that's not good for my mental well-being and those type of things. So I think all of it is making sure, like, and it's all part of education, right? Like, I may there are people who told me, like, hey, if Mastery knew who you were, they wouldn't have hired you. Like, there were people who told me that, right? Like, and maybe how I projected coming in was one way, and people who knew me were like, hey, but your orientation, I don't know if they really understood what you believed in, but so maybe that was part of the strategy, to get in and then say, okay, here's a way to do it. I think Jawanza Kunjufu said, years ago, the fact that we live in a capitalistic society and we don't explicitly teach our children about capitalism and how capitalism is wielded against them is probably one of the biggest parts of being miseducated that we provide our children. And I think all of it ends up back to strategy and technique, and how are we using these things to advance our the cause for our people.
All right, Raymond.
Oh man, so there's a couple of different directions I was gonna go, but I'm gonna keep it political. And so my final thoughts are to the Republican Party. I just saw 15 rounds of a vote in which a man was basically turned down and told, you're not good enough for this job. We do not want you for this job. And I know we talked before about, prejudice and racism and like all these other things, but like, it's gotta be, it's I don't know what kind of self-fulfilling prophecy, what kind of, but this only happens to white folks, bro. Because like, ain't no way in hell a black politician would have gotten 15 rounds to go back and forth with folks in terms of making concessions and doing all these other things in order to get a job that's third in line to be president of the United States. And so I'm just baffled at the fact that, like, I'm just this whole political process just baffles me. And I just see and know that there's going to be 2 years that nothing, absolutely nothing is going to get done. The only thing that's going to be done politically in the House for the next 2 years that could be guaranteed is a Hunter Biden expedition. That's it. So whatever you got for the past 2 years, be thankful for it, and we'll try again in 2 more years.
Well, piggybacking off of that, we're in real trouble because I think half of the country has lost its damn mind. And you can see it in the political expression that they are still electing people to office that are not very serious people. The only thing that they're serious about is white supremacy. They are not serious about governing. They're not serious about systems. They're not serious about whether or not people can put food on the table. They're not serious about transportation, about kind of like, aeronautical policies and NASA and whatever the things that we need them for, like the government, the governing a country and leading us forward. They're not serious about any of it. So this dude that just, in this party, that particular party, who just gets elected, George Santos, as a matter of fact, who has said that he's half black and Jewish and kind of Latino and was married to a woman, but is a out gay man and blah, 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 whatnot. He is the most kind of weird, fraudulent kind of candidate to make it all the way there. And there's been no call for him to really like resign. In my lifetime, we have gone from, you can be asked to resign for misspeaking a word, or like, Howard Dean, when he was running for president, made a sound into a microphone. Woo-ha! And that was enough to make him get out of the presidential race. And we've gone from that to now being able to lie about everything that you have ever said or done or whatnot. And as long as when you get up to take the oath, you do the white supremacy signal down here, right? As you're doing this up here, you can be forgiven anything. You could be the biggest bozo on planet Earth. And that is an entire party right now. That's out of 2 American parties, because we only have 2 that are actually operable. One of them is now characterized by what I just said. That means we're in real trouble, and our kids are in real trouble. And that says a lot about white power, because there is nothing that people of color could do to be this cartoonish, this ignorant, this stupid, this lying, this kind of buffoonish, and still hold the power. We got to be like exemplars on our side of the fence. We got to be lawyers. and doctors and blah blah. And on their side of the fence, bruh, come on. Anyways, we got to educate our way out of this. We got to educate our kids. But this is where I'm hopeful. They hate everybody. They hate everybody who's not white, straight, Christian male, right? Or people who want to be white, straight, Christian male. They hate everybody else. And if everybody else is a movement, then the everybody else movement is really big. That's a lot of people, right? So that's where my hope lies. My hope lies in the everybody else movement, because they're dwindling in numbers, and that's why they're acting the way that they're acting. That's why they're behaving the way that they're behaving, is because they know that the browning of America is real. So they're trying to head off the browning of America. So I encourage everybody to join the everybody else movement. And let's form the everybody else party, and let's go. Let's rock this thing out. Let's do it. Black, white, Puerto Rican, everybody just a freaking. Let's do this. All right? Y'all gonna join? Y'all gonna join? Anyways, this has been another episode of the 8 Black Hands. We thank y'all as always for joining us for another week. I appreciate you brothers for joining wherever you are. Sharif is in an undisclosed location, which I'm not gonna say, but he's not at home, and he still made it to the show tonight.
And I'm not
so did
there.
I.
And I'm not there. I'm not in the undisclosed location where he's at.
You're not
Just
there either.
Just,
You know.
pretend,
Trash,
just
bro.
pretend that you are, bro. Just
Just
pretend. That
pretend.
you are.
And we have fans and family and others that support us or whatnot chiming in from all over the place too. So we appreciate y'all as always. We'll see you next week on another episode of the 8 Black Hands. Do your best.